fell asleep for a minute, I was scared. I didn't feel my heartbeat, man, was I dead? Running out of air as I passed out. Now I understand why my cells be dying. Red ones, let me break it down like a fraction. WDC wasn't always a rapper. I used to love sin. I drank, I started walking backwards. I didn't have the power, I never did action. Born with the sickness is a challenge, was holding me captive. This is a weakness, but Christ is my passion. I'ma keep blessing and confessing. Tired, real sick, so I fail. Proclaim my healing. Christ is who I'm feeling. Sticking me, poking me, over-medicate me. In this hospital, I hope they release me. The battle of the genes. The battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. This battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. This battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. On this battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. Tired of feeling sick, never lost my focus. But once in a while, we feel so hopeless. Been sick my whole life, but I kept the fight. Then 20 years later, I received Christ. All I hear for a reason. These cells are tricky, breaking my body down. I feel like screaming. LA worldwide, we taking this by force, sharing our stories. Ain't no stopping us. Each and every week, we speak and teach. Just log on in, and you can be reached. Young and old, steady dying. Ain't no denying. We just get behind you. No, you can't destroy me. Eat the right things. That CD, cause it's in your genes. Time to get tested and reselected. Look at your community. That's where the help is. The battle of the genes. Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. This battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. This battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory. On the battle of the genes, Lord set me free. On this battle of the genes, I got the victory.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I gotta be me. Those red blood cells, I won't set them free.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to WDC Radio, a special edition of WDC Radio on Morris Media Live. You know, we're here right now, 323-293-3375. If you have any questions throughout this hour episode for Sickle Cell Awareness Month, as you know, I'm Farron, aka WDC. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's at IamWDC. Retired military, now sickle cell trait advocate for the last 8 years. And I have just learned so much about this community in the last 8 years that I didn't even know existed. I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was 29, 10 years in the military. And then at age 36, collapsed from what they say is sickle cell trait exertion with rhabdo. And then I have a daughter, Deja, who's 20 with sickle cell trait. Got a cousin on my dad's side with sickle cell disease, so I got the trait from my dad. All this stuff I had no idea was going on in my family until my experiences, and then meeting Phyllis Zachary Thomas, and then becoming an advocate for this sickle cell trait. There's so many different aspects of sickle cell trait, so I never do this conversation by myself because I can't speak for everyone. So I connect myself with people here that you'll see and calling in to help, I say, alter this conversation. It's been such an old dialogue for years, right? And so we know that facts can change, and so we're just making sure that the sickle cell trait conversation, from just knowing your status and making sure you don't mate with someone with sickle cell, to have a child with sickle cell, but also the risk factors and the causalities of athletes collapsing, and like myself in the military, soldiers collapsing with rhabdo. So I'm going to quickly introduce the people that are here with me. They're very special to me. That's why they're here, and they have a voice in this conversation just as much as I do. So I share this platform with them. So next to me, she's retired like me, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
I'm Pat Corley, and I'm a retired nurse. I was the nurse coordinator for a sickle cell program at Los Angeles County USC, and my role now is just as a community advocate out there advocating for people with sickle cell disease and for change so that we get equity and care for people with sickle cell disease.
And Pat has been great. When I had my second sickle cell trait class at San Bernardino Valley Community College, she actually came and spoke to the students and helped bring some education to those college students in the community college there. So I'm grateful for you, Pat, for being here, and your expertise and knowledge is hands down the best. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Next to her, Adrienne, you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Adrienne Shapiro. I'm the founder of Access Advocacy, and I am the mother of an adult child with sickle cell disease and the mother of an adult child with sickle cell trait, and the sister of an elder brother who had sickle cell and passed away at the age of 51. And so I'm in this struggle, have been in this struggle all my life, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And the gentleman next to her, I met him, I probably seen him on social media, but we met finally face-to-face at the Cayenne Wellness 10th Annual Sickle Cell Disease Symposium, and I heard his dialogue. He lives with sickle cell, and the conversation that he brings to the table about the politics and the legislation is so important, because that's where the change really happens. So, Dorian, introduce yourself, man, and we'll get this conversation started.
My name is Dorian Archie. Like he said, I have sickle cell. I have the most severe kind, sickle cell SS. My father kind of just slipped through the cracks growing up, like many sickle cell patients did. And you know, because prevention and awareness and education has not been at the level that it should be over the last 100 years, there's been very little progress in making, you know, those changes and reducing the amount of new sickle cell cases that you see. So I largely like to focus on, you know, education, prevention, and focus on policy change. I used to work for Organizing for America, various nonprofits and labor unions, but now I think, you know, the best place to utilize those efforts is with the community that I'm a part of, a community that I see is in dire need of, you know, organization and policy change and social change and medical change. So anything, you know, I can help do to bring a voice and awareness to that cause, that mission, is, you know, where I'm at.
Yeah, definitely. So. And so, again, this conversation is the impacts of sickle cell trait, and we're going to have a second half. I got Krishan and some other people coming as well that's going to connect when I say sickle cell trait impacted, because when those two people have that child with sickle cell trait, that child inherits both S genes, creates a child with sickle cell disease. So we're going to start from the trait, and then we're going to work our way to where this conversation meets with sickle cell disease. And then I got more guests that we'll switch out for the second half. If you go to my website, WDCOandsct.org, if you watch the Sports Collective on Mondays, the CHAMP study, I'm a part of that. I've done my blood work. They're doing a research. The Uniformed Services University is doing a sickle cell trait case study research on the causality of people with sickle cell trait in athletics and military and why we're collapsing. So they're actually doing blood work and everything. So if you'd like to be a part of that, if you're a trait carrier, we need you to participate so we can figure out what's going on with this one gene. You can go to WDCOandsct.org. There's a tab that says CHAMP on there. I'm going to play that PSA on one of the breaks as well, but we need you to participate. I've done the blood work. My family's getting ready to start their package as well. Very simple. They mail you everything. You call in, you do the questionnaire. If you qualify, they mail it to you. They give you the location of do the blood work. Everything comes in the package. You mail that back, and then you get $25 gift card at the end. But it's going to help them do some research on why people with sickle cell trait in the military and or whoever that has experienced rhabdo with sickle cell trait or sudden death, we're trying to figure out what's causing that. So the causality. We know there are risk factors, but we're not sure what's causing it with the cardiac arrest and things like that are the secondary health issues. So one of the people that I work with, Dr. Austin, who went back to school to do research on sickle cell trait, she actually is going to be on the line here. So I'm going to bring her on because, again, we know that how important hydration is, right? And most of us probably walk around dehydrated, because she's going to tell you that you're supposed to drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you're supposed to drink 50 ounces of water, right? And I know most of us don't drink. I know I don't, so I ain't even going to lie to you. It's a struggle. So she's on the line. Let me bring on Dr. Austin, and she's going to let you know about hydration and the As One Foundation. Dr. Austin.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to call in and be a part of this very important conversation. We're going full circle. We're talking about sickle cell trait this first half, and I've explained, my situation with sickle cell trait and the CHAMP study, and you as my teammate here in this advocacy work. Please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Okay, so I am Dr. Tamia Austin, Executive Director of the As One Foundation, founded by DeVar Darling, a retired NFLer now, but he established the As One Foundation in memory of his identical twin brother, Devon, who actually died of exertional sickling, rhabdo, and exhaustion are also included on his death certificate. So our foundation's mission is to educate and increase awareness about sickle cell trait. So, we met on that road and we've been on it, joined at the hip ever since.
Yeah. When I started advocating in 2010, I actually found the As One Foundation on the internet, and I was calling them and leaving emails and voicemails, and she happened to be transitioning into that position. And I was like, man, nobody answering these phones over here. And then here we are like years later working together. So
Yeah.
Dr. Austin, let people know how important hydration is, not just for sickle cell trait carriers or sickle cell disease community, but for the human race, like for humanity.
So I am a research scientist, and one of the things that we do is we talk risk factors. Risk factors for sickle cell trait, based on my research and a lot that's out there, is exertion, elevation, and dehydration. So the dehydration part comes because I often use the example of why we give water to our pets, why we water our plants, why do we put water in our cars. And that's to keep our vehicles from running hot, keep our pets from getting lethargic, keep our plants from dying. But research says it is an adaptation or an update to prior research that said in order to not be dehydrated, to drink 8 glasses of water a day. Well, New School says to have a customized approach to hydration is to drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day. And usually when I introduce this to any audience, I'm asking, okay, so in order for a human being to not be dehydrated, you have to have consumed half your body weight in ounces of water a day. So based on that, how many folks in this audience, in this room, are dehydrated? And unfortunately, one day it's going to change, but unfortunately, most hands are raised. And dehydration is a battle for everybody, regardless of sickle cell trait status. But imagine the importance of blood flow and what the water actually does in increasing oxygen blood flow to your veins, in having a blood disorder like sickle cell or sickle cell trait or disease that compromises that hydration is important. Yeah. And when it's not there, it increases the probability of these blockages that happen because of those sticky sickle cells that can clog up wherever there's blood. So if it's a block in the eye, if it's a block in the knuckle, if it's a block in the elbow, if it's a blockage in the heart, that is the danger or adverse health effect that can result from not being properly hydrated. And since our focus with the As One Foundation is on those that are physically active, we also advise that they hydrate before, during, and after any physical activity, no matter how mild it is, no matter what the weather is. Of course, we're hearing so much about heat strokes these days, but these types of blockages can occur regardless to the weather. So,
I want to ask you, in your research that you did, how important that conversation was about the athletes wanting their teammates to know that they were trait carriers, because there's so much different conversation that goes on about discrimination. Like, we want to avoid it, we want people to get discriminated against and things like that. But can you let the listeners know what the athletes actually told you about that conversation?
Yeah, so I conducted what we call a mixed method study that included surveys that gives you, very scientific, data on a chart kind of the results. But I also did focus groups where I interviewed student athletes, coaches, and parents about their sickle cell knowledge. And one of the things that comes up is the fact that the NCAA has mandated sickle cell trait screenings for athletes, but the American Society of Hematologists, ASH for short, is saying, along with some other organizations, that this is stigmatizing, meaning you could isolate or single people out to the negative if people know that they have sickle cell trait. Well, in the focus group, they were asked, these athletes were asked, coaches were asked, and even some of the parents were asked about whether or not an athlete would feel stigmatized if it were known amongst his teammates that he had sickle cell trait, or he or she. And quite to the contrary, much to our surprise, not only did athletes say, I want to know if my teammate has sickle cell trait, they also said, if I have sickle cell trait, I would want my teammates to know. I don't feel any stigma. If an athlete is on this field or on this court, they're here because they're here to earn a position, and there's regardless to their sickle cell trait. A parent spoke to the stigma as being non-existent because these children date, as one parent said specifically. They need to know. They need to know, just like they might need to know if they need an asthma pump. And they specifically spoke about, okay, so if we're on the field and the athletic trainer is way on the other side of the field, and I know that my teammate, has sickle cell trait and maybe collapses or whatever, I'll know that I need to get him or her some hydration. I'll know that I need to call the ambulance immediately. We need to know these signs. And then they further said, not only should this be reserved for athletes, but this testing needs to be available to all students on campus. We were specifically at a college in Florida. They're talking about the weather, how hot it can be, but all students, sororities, fraternities, people in dance, people in the marching band, cheerleaders, all students need to not only be tested, but need to be educated. And I took that as my marching orders, to educate as many people as we can. Of course, we're trying to convince more college administrators to bring us aboard to educate the coaches, educate the parents, educate the student athletes, and the greater student body. Yeah. But they want to know. They want to know. They don't feel stigma.
Dr. Austin, I want to thank you for taking time out and to make this call and be a part of this conversation today. I really appreciate you and look forward to doing more work with you in the future.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And so just before I bring this to my guest here, I agree with that conversation with sickle cell trait. However, I think that they're leaving out thalassemia trait. They're singling out sickle cell trait for athletes, but thalassemia trait, C trait, D trait, there are other red cell conditions that can cause complications during exercise, not just sickle cell trait. So the stigmatize, we could disappear that, because if you just test across the board, just, cardiac issues and things like that, if they test, then nobody's being singled out. Pat, you being the nurse for the many years that you did, can you talk about the newborn screening and what that looks like for?
I first want to elaborate a little bit on what you just said, because one of the things about testing for sickle cell disease is if you do the correct test, you will not only get sickle cell trait, but you'll get any other abnormal hemoglobins that are present in the person that you're testing. And so we do have an opportunity to capture all that information. It's just a matter of us doing the test to do it.
And that's the electrophoresis test. So that is the
It's called a hemoglobin electrophoresis.
So there's the one that you can do the finger prick that they do in about 5 minutes. You get a basic result, but you still need to take that to the doctor.
The finger prick is the Sickle Dex.
Yeah.
And it only tells you whether you have sickling or not.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And I being a victim, and I want to say victim, of having had one of those tests and being given a false negative.
Absolutely.
So my mom was the first mom in my family to have a child with sickle cell where they knew the cause. And so we were all tested, and I was told that I didn't have trait. And so I then made a baby with a Cuban, and I was told that only African Americans had. And then when she went through newborn screening, we got the results, and we were like, no, that's not possible.
Right.
So I always say that's when I learned that cheap science is a good science. And I started this journey, but you really need to ask questions.
Yeah.
You need to, and if you, in any way you don't know if you've ever been tested or not, or you think you were told you didn't, or you think maybe you told you, or you should go get tested.
Just get it done.
And you want to get the expensive test.
Yeah. That's how my father slipped through the cracks, like I was saying before. In the 60s, I think they were only testing for the S gene and sickling like that. And he was told the same thing, you're good to go. You don't have the trait. And my mom actually spoke with my father about it, and asked the question, do you have the sickle cell trait? Because she was very much, aware and educated on it. Mm-hmm. My dad was just like, nope, they said I didn't have it. And,
wow.
As opposed to just going and take the time to just get that
another
extra
blood work,
to be sure. Here I am. Not that I regret, the life that I was given, but, there are far too many cases of people who slipped through the cracks like that and didn't find out until, their first child was born with sickle cell.
Definitely.
Or with the sickle cell trait.
Definitely.
But oftentimes because of the lack of education about what the trait means, they're told, okay, you don't have the disease, you won't have any health complications or any issues with it. Parents often forget to educate their child when they start dating, when they start getting married and getting ready to have children. So that's not even in their mind to do that. And so many new cases keep popping up because of that very reason.
Definitely.
Right. If you look back over the history of sickle cell screening, which started back there with the Black Panther program.
Right, exactly.
They actually did the Sickle Dex test. But they did it because they had no knowledge of a more advanced test that would tell them exactly what was going on.
Right.
And so they identified people by saying you have it or you don't have it. But it did not identify those other abnormal hemoglobins. So, like my partner here, Adrian, who has a child with sickle C disease, which is another form of sickle cell disease, because there are many, many different forms of sickle cell disease.
Definitely.
Anytime you couple a gene for sickle hemoglobin with any other abnormal hemoglobin, you have a form of sickle cell disease. So that those individuals who would have a different type of abnormal hemoglobin, if they couple with somebody who has a gene for sickle hemoglobin, we get a form of sickle cell disease that is not the typical one that we hear about all the time, which is hemoglobin SS, which Dorian has, which is the most pure form of the disease. It means that he has 2 genes for sickle hemoglobin. But there are there are hundreds of different types of abnormal hemoglobins.
And sickle cell thalassemia is one of those. So you got sickle cell SD, so sickle cell thalassemia, ARAB, Monroe, there's E. I mean, like you said, hundreds of different types.
Yes.
And it's the separation of those things that keeps us classified as a rare disease, which also then keeps us lower on the radar for, research grants, funding, in the political circles.
And I heard something crazy at the conference where he mentioned that if they were a Hispanic background, that they had sickle cell beta thalassemia, that they put them in a thalassemia category. Mm-hmm. But if they were African American descent, then they put them in sickle cell category. So it's it's even separation in that when it's the same.
I think a lot of people don't understand that there are certain abnormal hemoglobins that you find more often in certain groups of people. Mm-hmm. So the thal genes, you find that a lot in
Asian.
People from the Mediterranean. And then you have E, which you find in people, Laotian people and people from those regions. Yeah. So that there's a separation of hemoglobin types. But if you couple them with a gene for sickle hemoglobin,
you belong with us.
You belong with us.
We all belong together.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
We should all be together.
Yeah. But I just wanted to bring up something that you mentioned about trade. So it was very... I've only been thinking about this a lot recently because my daughter, the younger girl, has sickle cell trait. And when I was pregnant with her, I went and we did all these tests, and I was so worried about her having sickle cell. And they did all these genetic tests, and I actually had them do it 3 times, maybe 4, to rule out. And it never occurred to me to ask them if she had trait. And when I got the results back from newborn screening and it said she had trait, I just broke into tears because all I could think of is how she was going to have to be so careful when it came to not even at that point being informed enough to know the things that I needed to be worried about as a trait carrier, and then things that she needed to be worried about.
Yeah.
So then I had to do another dive into that. So I think we shouldn't be kind of breaking our education up to saying, oh, this is trait means, or, or if you don't have the disease, then you don't need to be thinking about it. I think we have to keep it all together as we educate and the research, because I think certainly I know all my life I've had some things going on, like the fatigue, like the kind of general weakness, I remember I would dropping milk bottles and my dad getting really upset. It's always strong, but then I picked up the milk bottle and I dropped it. And so now I see my daughter, the younger one, complaining, and Pat's even seen it, where she's complaining of this kind of muscle fatigue, and otherwise she's very, very healthy. Yeah. So I think we have to understand more, more about it and the importance of knowing.
Yeah, I tell my story, like my arm been aching left arm since I was 5, and they told my parents, my mom and grandparents, it was growing pains. And then my daughter, I wasn't doing this work yet, so I didn't find out I had trait until 99, but Deja was born in 98. So that means I got a letter in the mail about the trait, but I just looked at it like, oh, okay, she's got the trait, and then just put it away. And then I found out the year later that I had the trait, and then when I transferred to Michigan, she was like 3, and she was complaining one day, my hands, my feet, a little girl. And I'm like, oh, growing pains, don't worry about it, because that's what I was told. And had no idea that like, again, this community existed and that there were other. And
I think the doctors will go and they will suggest it's, like RA. They'll think it's some sort of inflammatory disease. And it can go, I hate to say undiagnosed, which sounds kind of misdiagnosed because we as families don't think about it as much, and certainly the medical community doesn't think about it.
Absolutely.
I think there needs to be a lot more work done in studying sickle cell trait, number one. And number two, there is also the risk of misdiagnosing sometimes. Mm-hmm. People who sometimes are told that they have sickle cell trait or the carrier state may have a form of sickle cell disease. They may have sickle C disease.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes. I've met many people with sickle C disease who only felt like they had sickle cell trait. Yeah. I've met many people with sickle thalassemia who thought that they only had sickle cell trait. Yeah. So I think that we have to be very, very clear on doing good diagnosing, so that we can make sure that people have good information so that they can make good informed decisions.
I know the testing that we've done, people discovered they had sickle cell and alpha thalassemia.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a lady, Renee, lost her son. She knew he had sickle cell trait. He was in high school, college, all that, and was going to play professional overseas. When he died, they said all his red blood cells exploded in his sleep. They found that he had sickle cell trait that they knew about, alpha thalassemia, and a hemoglobin H disease. Wow. So he had those 3, and they only knew about the one, and his life was lost. You see, we have a caller. Live, what's the count? Hello, hello?
Yes, it's Dr. Lucas.
Who's this?
Dr. Lucas.
Oh, Dr. Lucas, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Hey, everything's going good. So do me a favor. I'm going to set you up in about 5 minutes. So can you call back in about 5 minutes?
No problem.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. So we're going to take a break real quick, but I wanted to ask my guests here before we go into the sickle cell disease conversation as it connects to the sickle cell trait. Pat, what do you want the world to know about sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease?
What I'd like them to know about sickle cell trait is that it's important for you to know your diagnosis. And what I'd love for them to know about sickle cell disease is that it's not just a disease of pain. Mm. It's a multi-organ disease that can affect any organ in the body that blood circulates to. Yeah.
Adrienne, what do you want?
And my fellow partner. I want everyone to know that if you have sickle cell disease, that you are worthy. That you are worthy of good treatment. That you are worthy of respect. And that there's a whole community out there. We're there. We're fighting with you. We are you. And to reach out to us. You should just, if you're feeling alone or frightened, you should just do a search and find us. We are well connected. And by that, I mean all the sickle cell groups,
Yes.
all the CBOs, things like this, radios. Reach out and get help. You cannot do it alone. And sometimes you think you can't, you should be able to do it alone, or you are alone. And I want to tell you that you're not alone, and we're all in this together.
Definitely. What do you want the world to know about sickle cell trait?
That it exists, and that it exists on a very large scale. I think that not just the African American community, but the world at large should be more aware of not just sickle cell, trait, but all of the variations.
Yeah.
The Jewish community was able to eradicate Tay-Sachs.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna talk about that because
in really about 40 years, they were largely able to eradicate it because of their testing and knowledge and education that they disseminated throughout their communities. And in 40 years,
I'm telling you, those numbers went completely.
Yeah, it was something like 1 out of 4 children was going to die from it. I think in the early 60s, they had entire epidemic centers for children with for Tay-Sachs. Where parents had to wait for a child to die almost just to get their child in there to die.
Yeah.
So I think just looking at the framework that they set up
exactly
to do it,
exactly
if our communities and the world at large could just be more aware of its existence and these blood disorders and take the time to educate themselves. And I think if the medical community and the social attitudes around these things and the stigmas that some communities have about the medical community,
exactly,
if we can just dispel some of that, I believe that just knowing that we're here, knowing that it exists, could do wonders, around the world.
The Tay-Sachs conversation, man. I look at that. Adrian, I know you want to speak on that. What do you want to say about that? Because I know
that was my mother's speech.
know that whatever the framework they did was effective.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But it was a little easier in that community.
But no.
The Black Panthers tried it. They tried to do the same thing, but we see what happened.
Go ahead, Adrian. What you got?
Okay, so that was my mother's thing, right? And why she had all of us tested, because she was following that. And she would say, this is not politically correct.
It's okay.
Okay. She would say, the Jews did it, we can do it.
Yes.
And which is why she had all of us tested.
Yes.
But I can't have the discussion without saying that the diseases are very, very different. And that our experience, once we got the protocols in place, our children lived. Where there were no protocols you could put in place. There was nothing you were going to do. If you were born with Tay-Sachs, your child was going to die this horrible, terrible death. So those parents chose not to have children. Mm-hmm. You see, so it's a little bit... It's a little bit,
but the framework,
different.
though, the conversation,
the framework is the same. But when you go into our communities, talking about eradicating sickle cell disease,
get touchy.
You got to deal with genocide.
I know, I understand
you got to deal with a lot of other factors.
I understand
that community did not have to deal with.
Right.
There's history that we have.
And then you do have.
That's why I said you got to dispel a lot of the stigma around the medical community.
So education.
Period.
And I think with the education, you can have choice. Like my girl that has trait says, well, I've got trait, I'm going to adopt kids. It's a wrap, right? Where my child who has sickle cell had this whole thing about wanting to be a mother and that she would only pass one. I mean, the whole thing.
Right.
So I think it is an individual
There
But-
are options. She can still have children.
Hey,
there are options, though.
Petri dishes. I'm all for baking them
in
up.
vitro,
It's-
you know,
right.
pick and choose 'em.
We've got to educate so that people can make good, informed decisions.
We're going to take a break right now, and then we're going to get into how this conversations connect to the sickle cell disease conversation. So we're going to take this break. I got Krishan here and some other guests, and I got the caller that's going to be calling back shortly. So, again, you want information, WDCONSCT.org. Again, thank you for being here. You're not going to go away, but we're going to take a quick break. Shout us out. What's the count?
The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP, of the Uniformed Services University of Health and Science, known as USUHS, is conducting a study to understand a possible genetic link between sickle cell trait, known as SCT, and exercise-related events, known as EREs, such as exertional rhabdomyolysis, muscle damage, heat stroke, and or collapse. We are inviting African-American men and women with sickle cell trait and their family members to participate. Participating in the study will require you to complete a health history questionnaire, a form authorizing our study physician to gather health information from you and your healthcare provider, as well as a one-time blood donation. In order to qualify for the study, you must meet the following criteria: be African American, be sickle cell trait positive, be able to read, speak, and understand English, be between the ages of 18 and 80, and currently not being treated for any mental or psychological disorders. Participation is completely voluntary, and your decision will not impact your healthcare. The results for this study are for research purposes only and are not intended to directly benefit any individual for confidentiality reasons. However, the results of this study are intended to help better shape policies and associated health risks affecting the SCT community. Participants may be compensated for their time. To join the study, or if you would like additional information regarding the study, please contact the study team by phone, area code 240-479-9514, or email sctstudy-ggg@usuhs.edu. The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP, of the Uniformed Services University of Health and Science, known as USUHS, is conducting a study to understand a possible genetic link between sickle cell trait, known as SCT, and exercise-related events, known as EREs, such as exertional rhabdomyolysis, muscle damage, heat stroke, and or collapse. We are inviting African-American men and women with sickle cell trait and their family members to participate. Participating in the study will require you to complete a health history questionnaire, a form authorizing our study physician to gather health information from you and your healthcare provider, as well as a one-time blood donation. In order to qualify for the study, you must meet the following criteria: be African American, be sickle cell trait positive, be able to read, speak, and understand English, be between the ages of 18 and 80, and currently not being treated for any mental or psychological disorders. Participation is completely voluntary, and your decision will not impact your healthcare. The results for this study are for research purposes only and are not intended to directly benefit any individual for confidentiality reasons. However, the results of this study are intended to help better shape policies and associated health risks affecting the SCT community. Participants may be compensated for their time. To join the study, or if you would like additional information regarding the study, please contact the study team by phone, area code 240-479-9514, or email sctstudy-ggg@usuhs.edu. The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP.
All right, welcome back. Please, again, if you have sickle cell trait 18 to 80, please participate in that case study. We need you to participate. We need you to be a part of that so we can find out what's going on with the sickle cell exertional sickling, explosive with rhabdo, the causality, the risk factors. We need you to participate in that. So WDCONSCT.org, or you saw the PSA, make sure you check that out. Call or send the email, and they will reach out to you and go through the questionnaire. All right, so again, this conversation leads into another conversation about living with sickle cell disease and the aspects of that and the impacts of sickle cell trait. So I got Krishan here, and what's your name again, sir? Tayshawn. And I got Tayshawn here sitting next to me. I met Krishan 2010, the power of social media on Twitter. We were both tweeting about sickle cell trait, sickle cell disease, and there was a conference, and we both ended up at the same conference, and then ended up working with Phil and Zachary Thomas and became teammates and done some great work together since the last 8 years. Did an event with T-Boz in Las Vegas and things like that, and multiple health fairs and conferences and engagements in the community. So she's here. She lives with one of the topics that we talked about, having sickle cell and another inherited gene called C trait. So she lives with sickle cell SC as well. And Tayshawn, what do you manage in life? Sickle cell, what type?
The 4 trait.
So you got sickle cell SS? The sickle cell disease?
SC.
SC disease?
Because my mom had the S and my dad had the C.
All right. So he is informed about what he manages in life. So, Krishan, introduce yourself so we can get this conversation started.
Hello, everybody. I'm Krishan, known as Girl for Sickle Cell, and I was born with sickle cell disease, hemoglobin SC, and it began to affect me at the age of 7 years old. And so my first encounter with sickle cell was with my vision. And one day it began to go blur. I couldn't see things. I had double vision. I couldn't see sliding doors. I mean, I was always trying to do something to make everybody laugh. But that day in particular, I walked through a sliding door. I couldn't see. And when my mother rushed me to the hospital...
Hey, man, don't break my mic, man.
They did a MRI, and they did a CAT scan, and they said that I had a silent stroke, and I had more blood flowing on the left side of my brain than the right. I wasn't getting enough oxygen, and I had a sickle cell crisis, and that's where it all began. And from there, many other things, gallbladders. Great thing is I gave life. I won't go too much into the sad stuff. Everybody knows the story. We're here today, and I have a 2-year-old. So.
Who's over here on the mic? Yes. Microphone checker. All right, Tishawn, introduce yourself, man, to the people listening and watching.
My name is Tishawn Washington. I get the sickle cell disease, and it started affecting me when I was a baby, and I didn't know about it until my sister told me. And then once I started getting older, sometimes I used to cry, and then sometimes I don't. And I used to start getting scared to get the bone marrow, but my mom told me it was okay.
It was okay?
He's scared, but just man up.
Just man up? So how old are you? Tell the people how old you are.
I'm 8 years old.
8 years old, and he's talking about sickle cell SC. When you say you got scared, right? So like, what were you thinking about? What is that?
About the bone marrow.
Yeah. So you want to do the bone marrow, or?
I do, but sometimes I be getting scared. Sometimes I don't.
Sometimes you don't. Where do you have your crisis at most of the time?
Like my arms, my fingers, and my legs.
And your legs. So tell me, you go to school now, so we know, our peers and young ages can be hard on us because they don't understand what we live with, right? So how do you tell your friends about your sickle cell?
They don't know about it. I just don't be talking about it.
You don't talk about it? So what do you do? You just be quiet?
I only talk to my teacher about it, and that's it.
That's it? Okay.
Only the teachers that I had in kinder, first and second, and now I'm in third. Okay.
So you 8 years old. We got Dorian here, who also manages a form of sickle cell, and he's 30 years old. So you two can definitely learn, and he can give you some insights on what kind of person you can become, right? And be encouraged to speak about it, because we need you to talk about sickle cell to your peers so they become educated. We know that our peers can be hard on us, man, and they tease us and they say things and people get bullied and things like that. But at the same time, by you speaking out helps them get informed and educated so we can stop the bullying, and maybe they can start to help in your care and conversation
and start being allies.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you going to say to that, Dorian? He's 8 years old, man.
Yeah, I know. 8 years old. I remember being 8, being at sickle cell camp, all my friends and everything.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important to build a sickle cell community, and have friends and mentors who can kind of help guide you through what it's going to be like living with this disease. Yeah. But it doesn't have to impede on anything that you want to do, your dreams. If you want to, go to the moon, you can go to the moon. Sickle cell doesn't have to stop you or hinder you in any way. You might feel tired every now and then, but it's nothing that's gonna take you out the game. Like your shirt says, best in the game. And as long as you keep a good positive attitude about yourself, you're aware, know your limitations, but also not be afraid to push the boundaries, and go beyond what your doctors say you can do. I think you'll definitely have a good road with this disease and navigating it.
And Dorian, let's talk to you for a bit. Like, what was it like for you, man, growing up with sickle cell?
Man, my most vivid memory as a kid with sickle cell was a doctor telling me, like, it was going to be the best news I heard all year. Men are living into their 60s with sickle cell, and he just said it, so jolly and cheerfully, like this should be the best news you've ever heard.
Wow!
And I was just like, what? 65? No, sir. So even though I wanted to do football and baseball and track and everything, but doctors were saying, don't let them do anything, pretty much. Don't let them get too exhausted. Don't let them get dehydrated. But I found that, just like I was just telling Tashawn, if you push those boundaries just a little bit, make yourself stronger. Don't feed the sickness. Both physically and mentally. That there's a lot you can do to overcome the effects of the disease.
Definitely.
To make yourself both physically stronger to endure what it may throw at you sometimes, but also so that you have a focus on something besides just being sick. Because like I was saying, the sickness will feed itself if you're docile. If you're, allow yourself to just, be relegated to being sick, then that's what you're going to be, sick.
And this conversation, you're way more than sickle cell, right? I mean, so let people understand, like what else are you up to in life? Because I don't want to leave it to where, like, sickle cell is the focus, right? Of that's not just who you are. It's something that you live with and you manage, but it's not. It doesn't define you as who you are as a person.
Absolutely. And that was something a conclusion that I drew when I was a kid. That it was not going to define me, but I was going to define it. Its role in my life was going to be as big or as small as I allowed it to be. So I chose to focus on extracurricular activities that I could do: theater, band. Even marching band, which is quite physical. Did a little track. I did things that could steer my mind away from just being sick. And then going off to college, I said, I'm going to go away from home. I'm going to find my independence a little bit and, not just be surrounded by people who are always going to be catering and coddling to the disease, but to actually find, that independence that I was going to need to really kind of navigate this world, and live with this disease. Because if you allow it to hinder you, it's going to hinder you.
I know there's a huge conversation we've had before, especially a lot of the conferences, about that transition from pediatric, from this young guy's age here who's going to turn into a teenager shortly. What is the gap that you experience, or what you look back and see from your transition?
I would say, and most sicklers have the exact same experience. It's very rare that you don't hear these kind of horror stories where patients go from being in child care, and just like with any child, you cater to them, you want to comfort them, you want to be there for them, nurture them, support them. It's not the same when you're an adult. So just being 18 or 21 sometimes for sicklers, and going from that transition of having nurses and doctors who are very nurturing and supportive to nurses and doctors who are very apathetic, are dismissive to your pain. It's shocking, almost like a culture shock, a medical shock, because it's like night and day. Going from having people love on you and treat you well, listen to your needs and your concerns, and not be dismissive of them. And then to just in a night, go to adult care hospitals and be treated like you're
a stranger.
You're a stranger.
Tashawn, I want to ask you. You've been in the hospital, obviously. Sometimes. What is your hospital experience?
It's like, man, every time I go to the hospital, sometimes I stay in there for like a couple of days, but my mom be teaching me, like, hospital is not a good place for you, but it's good to, like, help you get your sickness taken away. And, like, if you have a fever or something, like my mom, she told me, like, if I get sick or something, just tell her. And sometimes, like, every time, like, sometimes when I get fevers, I just be falling asleep.
You sleep them out. What do you notice that triggers your crisis?
water and water. I can't get in it that much because
You'll get
my
cold.
arms they just start my hands they just start cramping up on me and sometimes I can get in the water, sometimes I can't.
But you enjoy swimming when you can? I'm sure. You can experience, you
absolutely,
recognize that one?
I was lucky enough to grow up in Texas, so it's almost always scorching hot.
Yeah.
But I went to an indoor pool one day as a kid, man, and got out of there and almost went straight into a crisis because that temperature change, and that's no joke. So I to this day, I'm very cautious about what water I'll get into.
Yeah.
I only do jacuzzis strictly now, but yeah.
Huh? What is your pain like? So we have Pat wants to know, what is your pain like?
It's like a pain just going through your body and touching your bone, and it just start hurting like that.
So you can feel it all the way to your bone?
It just go it's like needles keep
needles?
going in and out of you.
Yeah. Piercing needles?
That's how I be feeling in my leg. And my hands, it just feel like I be getting cramps.
Like cramps?
And tell them why you didn't want to have the bone marrow transplant.
So I guess she wants to know about why you chose not to do the bone marrow transplant?
I want to do it, but sometimes I just be getting scared and scared to just get the bone marrow because
They explain to you the risk factors, what could happen?
I be thinking about it's gonna hurt or something.
Yeah.
But my mom told me it's gonna be pain, much pain for my brother than me.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, you got
So
time.
that's why I didn't just worry about me. I just worried about my brother.
That's good.
Yeah.
But I worry about me most of the time.
Well, you gotta worry about you.
You gotta worry about you, for sure.
What do you want, your peers that's going to see this later, what do you want them to know about sickle cell?
I want them to know about sickle cell is not a game.
It's not a game.
It's painful, and the people that's out there that know about it or don't know about it, but I'm just letting you know that it is painful and that it could hurt your body in different places that you don't know. It will just trigger any place that you don't know.
And any time of the day, any time of the night, you could be at school, you could be anywhere, and that crisis happens. What do you want to say to the bullies?
I don't people don't be bullying me at the school.
No, they don't bully you, but because you don't talk about it though.
Well,
I don't like my friends to know that much about me.
Why not?
Because it just
you're a private person.
Well, hey, I'll tell you this. I know it can be scary talking to your friends about it, and I was the exact same way. I was like, as long as I'm healthy, nobody needs to know. But especially if, you're around a lot of people who, look like you, it's important to talk about it. Let them know, because your friends will go back and tell their parents about it, and then their parents will be more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And then you help create more awareness and more understanding about the disease that you have. So when somebody sees you and you tell them you have sickle cell, they automatically know what it is, and they don't have that, oh, what's that kind of reaction?
Yeah.
Because they're aware.
Krishan, what do you want to say to the folks about, from a woman's perspective with sickle cell, from your perspective with sickle cell?
That we have come further, still have a ways to go, but I believe that sickle cell is starting to get the attention that it deserves, and we've definitely done a great job of making people aware. People are aware now that we have their attention. It's just time to go into our communities, to our inner cities, and really educate people and bring back the screenings and the testings at these health fairs. And when they do these big events, they always asking for vendors to come through. It's okay to ask, because what happened to me growing up, same thing like Trishawn. I was bullied, living in the inner cities in Linwood. It's something that I had to learn and tell my mom and the teachers not to disclose to the classroom growing up in the hood. I was sick all the time. I got picked on. I looked different. I might be nauseous. I used to have to run out of class, go to the nurse's office. So I got to the point I didn't want to go to school anymore. But the biggest thing is just education when it comes to the kids. And it just, I sought out like Dorian to find my independence, to find what worked best for me. I got tired of spending anywhere from 2 weeks to 54 days at a time in the hospital from ages 7 to 19, them telling me I wasn't going to make it, I wasn't going to live. And I knew I had a desire to live. My mom always told me my mind was very powerful. You could do whatever you put your mind to, and, to have faith. And I had a lot of spiritual encounters over the years, the higher being with God, as I would say. And it's just many things, we've been doing this since 2010, for a while, and it's just like I would like to say that I've survived in some different alternative treatment options to definitely.
Yo, man, you killing my mic, yo. You killing my mic, man. What are you doing?
This is the part of taking kids to work.
What are you doing? So let's. I want you to touch on that, because a lot of even, Adrian mentioned about her daughter living with sickle cell and wanting to have kids, and the risk factors of that. Like we know, like even Dorian just said, like sometimes you got to take that risk. Sometimes you got to see.
I wanted to
besides push those limits. So
yeah, that was definitely a goal, something that I wanted to do that I was told that I'd never be able to do. And, we all hate being told no. It's like, well, why? T-Boz did it. She survived. I know other few people that had sickle cell, they survived. So, I can too. But it wasn't quite that simple. And, it's like I almost didn't make it. There were a lot of complications. And I had him on Labor Day of 2015. My labor was induced. I thought I was going to be able to have him natural. I didn't dilate. I had problems with the epidural. I had frequent crisis throughout my pregnancy, but the goal was just to stay hydrated. I changed my diet pretty much. I had to eat just salads and watermelon with lemon juice. I couldn't eat no unhealthy foods. Everything made me sick during my pregnancy. So it was just like, this is how we're supposed to be eating anyway. The baby's telling us this is not natural. Don't feed me these eggs. Don't give me no cow.
Right.
And it's just, that's all it really is. Living to this age with sickle cell, it's just knowing what works best for you, what to do, not to do. Like coming home from the seminar, I had a experience. I don't quite take my pain meds like everyone else does, unless it's needed, or at that point I'll go to the hospital. So I'll wait until the last minute. I try to exhaust all options at home. We got an adjective filtration system, the best Kangen water, thinking, okay, well, this will help, and that, just trying to go and take a more holistic approach to things. So
definitely,
my thing on anybody out there that's thinking about having a baby with sickle cell, definitely make sure your hemoglobin is, where it's supposed to be. It's above of 7. You're staying hydrated. You're rested. You have the energy for it, and you're just ready to take on carrying another human being.
So I'm going to take a quick break because we got a few more minutes left. I'm going to bring up Pat and Adrian back up here with the rest of us so we can wrap up the show. Again, we appreciate you for tuning and listening. And shouts out to Moore's Media for giving us the opportunity to have this episode to wrap up Sickle Cell Awareness Month, September. So we'll be right back. Shout us out. What's the count?
The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP, of the Uniformed Services University of Health and Science, known as USUHS, is conducting a study to understand a possible genetic link between sickle cell trait, known as SCT, and exercise-related events, known as EREs, such as exertional rhabdomyolysis, muscle damage, heat stroke, and or collapse. We are inviting African-American men and women with sickle cell trait and their family members to participate. Participating in the study will require you to complete a health history questionnaire, a form authorizing our study physician to gather health information from you and your healthcare provider, as well as a one-time blood donation. In order to qualify for the study, you must meet the following criteria: be African American, be sickle cell trait positive, be able to read, speak, and understand English, be between the ages of 18 and 80, and currently not being treated for any mental or psychological disorders. Participation is completely voluntary, and your decision will not impact your healthcare. The results for this study are for research purposes only and are not intended to directly benefit any individual for confidentiality reasons. However, the results of this study are intended to help better shape policies and associated health risks affecting the SCT community. Participants may be compensated for their time. To join the study, or if you would like additional information regarding the study, please contact the study team by phone, area code 240-479-9514, or email sctstudy-ggg@usuhs.edu. The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP, of the Uniformed Services University of Health and Science, known as USUHS, is conducting a study to understand a possible genetic link between sickle cell trait, known as SCT, and exercise-related events, known as EREs, such as exertional rhabdomyolysis.
All right, we're back again. Welcome to a special edition of WDC Radio. I'm your host. I'm Farron, aka WDC. Any questions, hit me up. Twitter, Instagram is at IamWDC. Again, this is way too much conversation to have within an hour. I mean, this is lifelong stuff that we're talking about. So we're going to just bring you as much facts and experiences that we can to wrap up Sickle Cell Awareness Month. Dorian, I appreciate you for coming, man, because I know I've been to quite a few conferences, man, and the men, we don't really show up to these conferences, man. And so shouts out to the Prophet, who's been on the tour with me, with us on the Black College Tour. He's stepped up and been speaking and taking pictures and sharing his story. So he and I were talking on the tour like, man, where are all the guys at? Like, the guys with sickle cell don't step up and have these conversations. Yeah. And so we need you men to step up and have these talks with us. Absolutely. Share your experiences, share your stories with us. You see this guy here, 8 years old, out here telling his story, man. So,
and that's why we want him to step up, because we don't want them to not share their story.
Exactly.
Like this young man talked about not sharing his stories with his classmates, because you have classmates that also have sickle cell disease. One of the things that I found out as a nurse, when I started in my nursing career in sickle cell, many of my classmates had sickle cell disease. And I didn't know they had sickle cell disease. I just thought they were lazy and didn't want to come to school. So it's important for you to really share that information, because what you know can help someone else be a better person.
And we're going to help you.
Related to knowing about sickle cell disease.
Even a better parent.
We're going to help you. We're going to help you share that message. We'll come to your school and talk to your classmates and things like that, so they understand what you know, who you are, not just sickle cell, but who you are as a person, so they don't just stop at the sickle cell stuff, but, you know, who you want to be and grow up and the stuff that you... Come on, tell us about Friend Alert.
I want everybody to know about it, because I just want people to know about sickle cell, that it's not nothing to play about. And like, every time I go to the hospital, I can't go to the playroom, I can't play games. Sometimes I could, but sometimes I can't, because I be have to get medicine, do my thing, and most of the people be sick, most of the people be having, like, I just want everybody to know that's in the hospital, that's out, who got sickle cell disease, and that got, like, identical match. I just want them to know that they could get the bone marrow too.
All right.
And that is the person that got sickle cell disease, it ain't gonna hurt that much for him.
Pat, I know you wanted to mention some or ask some specific questions before we get out of here.
I did want to. One of the things is that we all know that there's an opioid epidemic now.
We touch on that one.
That is really, really affecting our community. And Dorian, I just want you to speak a little bit on that, and also speak on what the character of pain is like, and what kind of things you utilize in order to take care of your pain.
Absolutely. So, largely within the sickle cell community, because of how many opioids we are given, kind of like I was saying, between pediatrics and adult care, you go from being nurtured to almost being treated as you're a drug addict almost. And it can be extremely disheartening when the person who you've placed your care, your care in their hands, is viewing you as, a drug seeker before they're seeing you as a patient. And you could be in the most excruciating pain of your life, feeling like, you're being, beaten from the inside out, literally by the life force of your body, because that is what's happening. Your red blood cells are tearing through, arteries and veins and beating your muscle tissue up and, tearing up internal organs.
And the white cells. Even.
Yeah, and the white cells are backdooring them, so it's literally like having the life force of your body beat you from the inside out. And, when you get to the hospital and you're pumped full of drugs, from the time that you're to Sean's age or even younger, I think I spent my first birthday in the hospital, and that was actually the first time I was given codeine. when I was 1 year old. So, you're putting patients on, heavy narcotics and keeping them on these narcotics, almost essentially throughout their life. And then at the same time, treating them as if they, are drug abusers, when this has been their treatment, the treatment prescribed by their doctors, by the hospitals, by hematologists, for a century now. This has been the mode of treatment, but it's a double-edged sword because, and they're not doing the research into the mental health effects of it. They're not doing research into the physical effects of what, we can see how a normal person reacts to having, massive amounts of narcotics, pumped into their bodies. And even though we may be in excruciating pain, they're not addressing how treating that pain with these narcotics is doing, both to us mentally, socially, physically.
It's so much, and I appreciate you guys for coming here, but my time is up. It is so much stuff that we can sit and talk about. We've got to do this again, so I invite you all back in the community to come out.
At DRG357.
Boom, that's where you can find him.
Yeah.
Again, we thank you for watching and tuning, listening in. We got to get out of here. Shouts out to Morris Media for this wrap-up of Sickle Cell Awareness Month in September. And you'll catch me on Sports Collective TV on Mondays, and WDC Radio is coming back, so stay tuned for that. Shout us out. What's the count?
Thank you.
Covered with the blood of Jesus Christ. Died on the cross, paid the price for our life. I praise God like every morning, noon, and night. I'm going through temptations. I gotta do it right. Covered with the blood of Jesus Christ. Covered with the blood of Jesus Christ. Covered with the blood of Jesus Christ. I'm going through temptations. I gotta do it right.
Okay, I keep God first, so blasted on me. On a mission with this gift until the casket on me. I got the sword, I got the word, God hands on me. Yeah, I've been through battles, but my angels go to war for me. I rock the choir, they dance for me. The Lord Shepherd, he making plans for me. Demons never step in my sector, I'm filled with the glory. You know I'm getting better, and better, and better. The path God got me on's forever, and ever, and ever. I ride with Jesus Christ and that's forever, forever, forever. I ride with Jesus Christ and that's forever.